Task 4 talks about adhering to the specific codes of conduct. Task 4 has 14 qualifying criteria. Let's look at Task 4, Qualifying Criteria 12. Explain the manner in which complaints are to be handled by the industry as required by General Code of Conduct for FSPs and representatives. Here we will be dealing with how complaints are handled by the financial services industry and the relationship between the FSP, the FACE onboard, and the clients, also known as the complainants. We need to look at different sections from different legislations to understand the process of handling complaints. Section 20 of the FACE Act deals with the Office of the Ombud for Financial Service Providers, known as the FACE Ombud. Section 16 of the Code of Conduct deals with the general definitions in terms of complaints. Section 19 of the Code of Conduct deals with specific obligations and/or responsibilities of the FSP relating to complaints. Section 6B of Board Notice 81 of 2003 covers the rules on proceedings of the Office of the Ombud for Financial Service Providers. And Section 27 of the FACE Act deals with the receipt of complaints, prescriptions, jurisdiction, and investigation by the Ombud. We will now look at each section in detail. Firstly, let's take a look at Section 20 of the FACE Act, dealing with the Ombud for Financial Service Providers. The Office of the Ombud for Financial Service Providers is called the FACE Ombud, as shown on its logo and website address illustrated here. Section 20 of the FACE Act looks at how the Office of the Ombud for Financial Service Providers is set up and explains its functions for financial services providers. Basically meaning that the Ombud office is run by a person known as the Ombud. The Ombud must decide on how to deal with a complaint in a fair, informal, economical, and expeditious way and/or manner by considering contractual arrangements and other legal relationship between the client and any other party to the complaint, and the provisions of the FACE Act. The Ombud must be independent and impartial when dealing with complaints. Next, let's look at Section 16 of the Code of Conduct, dealing with the general requirements on dealing with complaints. Here we have a financial service provider, FSP for short. Here we have our clients. Here we have the Office of the Ombud for Financial Service Providers, commonly known as the FACE Ombud. The FSP must have in place an internal complaints resolution system and procedures in order to deal with complaints it receives from clients. Section 16 defines what internal complaint resolution system and procedures are in relation to an FSP and a client. This means the system and procedures established and maintained by the FSP must be in accordance with the Code of Conduct for the resolution of complaints from clients. Client makes a complaint against an FSP. A complaint, as defined by Section 1 of the FACE Act, relates to a financial service rendered by an FSP, key individual, or representative to the client, where the complainant alleges the FSP, key individual, or representative has contravened and/or failed to comply with the FACE Act, or has willfully or negligently rendered a financial service to a complainant, or has treated the complainant unfairly, and as a result, the complainant has suffered and/or will suffer financial prejudice or damages. It is important to remember this concept of financial prejudice or damages. Just a note that you will see in the complaints process, they refer to the complainant which is basically the client. The FSP must request the client to put and lodge the complaint in writing. The FSP must handle complaints from clients in a timely and fair manner. The FSP is to take steps to investigate and respond promptly and in reasonable time to such complaint. The FSP must maintain a record of the complaint for a minimum period of 5 years. If the complaint is not resolved to the client's satisfaction, then the FSP is to advise the client on any further steps which may be available to the client, such as referring the complaint to the phase ombud. Section 16 of the Code of Conduct defines a resolution or internal resolution of a complaint to mean that the complaint is resolved by way of the internal complaint resolution system, processes, and procedures of the FSP. Next is Section 19 of the Code of Conduct, which deals with the specific obligations and responsibilities of the FSP in terms of handling complaints. So here we have the FSP, the client, and the phase ombud. Section 19 excludes the representatives of the FSP from these obligations and responsibilities. The FSP must have an internal complaints resolution system and procedures in place, which excludes the representatives. So basically, the system must not rely on the representatives in any way. The FSP's internal complaint resolution system and procedures must be in writing. An FSP must, as its duties and responsibilities, reduce to and put in writing the systems and procedures of its internal complaint resolution processes, and provide its clients access to these system procedures and processes that have been documented. Systems and procedures must make provisions that once a complaint is received, an acknowledgement and confirmation of receipt is provided to the client that the complaint is sent and allocated to a staff member appointed to resolve it. The complaint receives proper consideration. Management controls are in place to control and supervise the consideration process. The client must be informed and notified of the process in terms of Rule 6 as well as timing, should they want to take the matter further if the outcome is not favorable. The procedures must always be available and accessible to the clients at all times. The procedures should provide a summary of the procedures that the client can follow should their complaint be dismissed by the FSP, and how to lodge the complaint to the phase ombud or other ombud. The name, address, and contact details of the particular ombud should also be included. The procedures should state that the client must put or lodge the complaint in writing where possible and include all relevant information and copies of documents to support the complaint. The procedures are to indicate that the FSP will notify the client of receipt of the complaint with contact details of the staff involved in the complaint resolution process. This process must be properly documented by staff to ensure the adherence and compliance to the Code of Conduct. Where any complaint is resolved in favor of the client, the FSP must make sure that all appropriate redress and compensation is offered to client without delay. Let's now focus on Section 6B of Board Notice 81 of 2003, which is basically the rules on proceedings of the FSPsand. Here we have the three parties that we will be discussing in this section, being the client, or also called the complainant, the FSP, or also called the respondent, and the FSPsand. The first step in the process is that one party has an issue or a grievance against another party. Therefore, the complainant or client lodges a complaint to the respondent or FSP in writing. Parties would only involve or resort to the Ombud when a complaint cannot be resolved between the parties, but they must prove that they have tried to resolve it first and before directing it to the Ombud. Once a complainant lodges a complaint with the other party, known as the respondent, and the respondent can see or realize that they cannot resolve the complaint within 3 weeks, then they must acknowledge receipt of the complaint in writing and provide the contact details of the respondent as soon as complaint received. If the respondent cannot resolve complaint to the satisfaction of the complainant within 6 weeks of receiving the complaint, then the respondent must inform the complainant that they can refer the matter to the FSPsand if they wish, and that they have 6 months to do this. The Ombud must inform and notify the respondent when they receive a complaint against them to the extent they need to respond. It is important that the complainant will have 6 months to inform and notify the Ombud of the complaint if the respondent could not resolve the complaint, so the process could happen at any time during that period. The respondent can submit and provide any information and/or documents to the Ombud in response to the complaint. The Ombud can request any information they deem necessary from the respondent, and the respondent must respond. The respondent is to act professionally, reasonably, and cooperate to ensure the efficient resolution of the complaint. Lastly, let's look at Section 27 of the FSPsand Act, which covers what happens and what processes are followed by the Ombud Office in terms of receipt, the prescription, jurisdiction, and investigation of a complaint. Remember, we have our three parties as before, being the FSPsand, the client, or also referred to as the complainant, and the FSP, or also referred to as the respondent, and or involved parties, which may be the key individual and or representative. The complainant lodges their complaint with the FSPsand, as discussed previously in this video. The Ombud must determine A. If the requirements of Section 26, subsection 1, paragraph A4 have been complied with. Basically, has the complaint been taken to the respondent first before being brought and lodged with the Ombud's office? B. If not, then act in terms of the rules before bringing it to the Ombud. That is, to send and notify the respondent and offer the respondent an opportunity to resolve the matter with the client first. C. Otherwise officially receive the complaint if it qualifies as a complaint. The official receipt of the complaint by the Ombud suspends the running of the prescribed period until the complaint has been withdrawn or dealt with. For those who don't know what a prescription period is, it's the maximum time period that someone can take action against another person and or party. So once the Ombud receives a complaint, the prescribed period is suspended until they can deal with the issue or complaint. Here we deal with the jurisdiction of the Ombud. The Ombud must decline to investigate a complaint if it has been taken to court before or during the Ombud investigation. The Ombud must decline to investigate a complaint that is more than 3 years old. If a person was not aware of this time requirement, then it is effective from the date they knew about it. The Ombud may on reasonable grounds determine that the complaint be dealt with by the courts or other dispute resolution processes and decline to handle the complaint. The Ombud must not proceed to investigate the complaint received unless A. The Ombud has informed and notified all interested parties of the complaint. B. The Ombud has ensured that all parties have received enough information about the complaint in order to respond to the complaint. C. The Ombud has provided all parties with opportunity to submit responses. The Ombud may implement any procedures, including mediation, which is deemed appropriate and may allow parties right to legal representation. The Ombud must first try to explore any reasonable prospects of resolving the complaint by means of conciliation settlement to all parties. The Ombud may try to speed up the resolution of the complaint through conciliation settlement. Therefore, make recommendation to the parties. If they don't accept recommendation, then obtain reasons why. If they accept the recommendation, then the recommendations will be seen as a final determination of the Ombud. The Ombud can delegate the functions of the investigation and determination to someone in its office. The Ombud can also mandate a person or tribunal to perform these functions. We have now covered how complaints are handled by the financial services industry and the relationship between the FSP, the Ombud, and the clients and/or complainants. We will go through some possible questions to see how much you have learned. Question 1. The Ombud for financial service providers is the person appointed to resolve disputes between consumers and financial service providers relating to A. The experience of the advisor. B. The performance of the investment. C. The quality or nature of the advice given. D. The contract between the insurer and the client. Pause the video here and think about the answer. The answer is option C. Being the FACE Ombud is to resolve disputes relating to the quality and/or nature of the advice given. Question 2. How must a complaint that has been lodged with the FACE Ombud be completed? Choose the correct statement. A. Completing a complaint form. B. Writing a letter and with it send a copy of the FSP's final response. C. Sending correspondence from the FSP regarding the complaint. D. Completing a complaint form and sending or attaching correspondence from the FSP regarding the complaint. The answer is option D. When the complainant lodges a complaint with the Ombud, the complaint must be completed in a complaints form and send or attach all correspondence from the FSP regarding the complaint. Question 3. Which of the following statements are true? 1. If a case cannot be settled through mediation or conciliation, the FACE Ombud or the Deputy FACE Ombud may issue a determination. 2. In terms of the FACE Act, the existing voluntary ombudsman established by the financial services and banking industry enjoy recognition. 3. The FACE Ombud can officially accept a complaint for investigation if the complaint relates to a financial service that was rendered on or after 30 September 2004. 4. A determination has the same legal effect as a judgment of a court. Select option A, B, C, or D. The correct answer is option D, all being the true statements. Note that you need to use questions as a learning tool and opportunity in preparation for your exam. Question 4. The FACE Ombud will consider a complaint which happened or occurred A. 6 months ago and the client has reported the complaint to the FSP. B. 6 weeks ago and the client has not reported to the FSP. C. 6 months ago and the client has not reported the complaint to the FSP. D. More than 3 years ago. The correct answer is option A. A complaint which happened 6 months ago and was reported to the FSP will be considered by the FACE Ombud. Question 5. When dealing with complaints, the Ombud must be independent and impartial. The objective of the Ombud is to consider and dispose of complaints. What is the manner in which the Ombud must deal with a complaint? Choose the correct statement. A. In a fair manner. B. In an economical and expeditious manner. C. In an informal manner. D. All of the above. Pause the video here and see if you can work out the correct answer. The correct answer is D. All the statements are correct. The Ombud must deal with the complaint in a fair, economical, expeditious, and informal manner. So let's go through a final overview of what has been covered. Firstly, we looked at the establishment of the Office for Financial Services Providers, known as the FACE Ombud. We then went through the complaints process between the client and the FSP. We then covered the internal controls and procedures that need to be in place at the FSP to deal with the client's complaints. Then we covered the time required for the FSP to deal with the complaint, and then when the complainant can proceed to take and lodge the complaint to the FACE Ombud. And then lastly, we went through the process the FACE Ombud must follow when receiving and dealing with a complaint. We hope you enjoyed the video and learnt a lot. Please make sure to check out our other RE videos.